In fact, nobody really thought about those things. It's only today, Paula, in our profoundly privileged position in life, where you look at your man and you say, "Where is your paycheck?" And then, "You know, my birthday is coming up tomorrow. What are you going to buy me?" And then he comes home on a Friday, "You didn't bring me flowers." And then on Tuesday, "Did you write poetry for me?" And then on Thursday, "It's our movie night, honey." And you expect one man or you expect one woman to be able to play 1,001 different roles in your life so you could be satisfied. Never before in our history, Paula, were human beings in relationships, okay, were forced to play so many roles, to be burdened by so many demands. And I don't really need to make many demands from you as my companion. The truth is, society now has seasoned you in a way, Paula, where motherhood is no longer enough. Having a bachelor's or a master's degrees are no longer enough. Being a dean at Laney College is no longer enough, because now you need to be a president at D'Anzo College. Buying a house that's only 2 bedrooms is no longer enough. You need 5. And this is the new plague. You know, our plague is no longer not having enough food in our fridge. Our plague, plague is something, I don't know if you guys know, around the 13th century or so, this plague that came from, some people say Spain, some people say Italy, somewhere in Europe, okay? All these rats or mice, they begin to infect the food bank, you know, or they get in touch with people and they bite them. Who the hell knows? All of a sudden people get sick. It's called the Black Plague, okay, or the Black Death. And what happens is that once you get infected, your skin turns slowly black. And then you have all these like boils or blisters in your body. And then you die a miserable death. Almost 100 million people died. That's what a plague is. And plague is the ultimate symbol of democracy. It doesn't care if you're religious. It doesn't care if you're an atheist. It doesn't care if you're a prostitute. It doesn't care if you're committed to your husband. It doesn't care if you're a pope. It doesn't care if you're a politician. The plague hits everyone equally. King, slave, black, white, brown, yellow, makes no difference. The plague in 21st century is not enoughness. It's just not enough. My relationship is not enough. My kids are not enough. My job is not enough. And you know, all of us have become like this dog in Pavlov's experiment. Society rings a bell, and I assure you, it rings a bell every 5 seconds. And all of a sudden you begin to salivate. You know, it doesn't take very much for this bell to ring. You walk down the lake, 2 people are holding hands, and you demand that from your husband or your wife. A man is sitting reading a book to a companion, you say, "I want that." A man is driving a Lexus and the wife is on the passenger seat and say, "I want that." It's just not enough. Our parents didn't have that burden. You and I do. Again, we do privately, personally, and socially. And, some weeks ago you had asked about why is it that people cheat? We can call it an unjustifiable act. We can call it a cruelty imposed upon your companion. All of those judgments may be true. But all of us live within the climate of the culture. And if you're desperate enough, poor enough, needy enough, it's going to happen. And it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to kind of have that particular experience, going outside of the boundaries of your relationship to be with another. It's devastating. There is a scene in, what was that movie? Quantum Solace, is it? Solace? James Bond movie? Where near the end of the movie, this man is left to wander into the heat of the desert, and all he is given is a can of oil, motor oil for cars. And he drinks it. He dies. And when he is found and when his stomach is pumped, I don't know the name of this woman, his boss. She tells him, we found this guy, his stomach was pumped, and we found motor oil in his stomach. Would you happen to know as to why we would find that? And he'd say no. And the point is, when you live in the desert and you're walking and you don't find water, you don't find an oasis, you don't find a tent with people, with water, the last resort is to drink the motor oil, hoping that it'll sustain you. The other aspect to your question is the following. I have no doubt that as an 18-year-old, when you fell in love with this man, questions about money did not enter your mind. And the only thing you wanted as an 18-year-old was, I want to fall in love. When you had your child, at the age of, say, 19 or 20, all of a sudden, you changed. And that change was imposed upon you. It wasn't your evolution, your natural, organic evolution, where you sit, you observe, you think as to what place money plays in society. How important is the function of money in people's lives? You kind of just sit there quietly and you just take notes. That you didn't do. Because if you had done so, you would have brought that into your relationship from the very, very beginning. Okay? So you have a child, and you think that, as Beatles would say, love is all that you need. Then you look at your man and you say, let's go to Costco and buy what we need for this newborn. You look at this box of diapers and it says 100 of them for $34.95. You say, what? 34 bucks? Yeah. And you think 100 diapers will last you at least for 5 months. And all of a sudden you realize you go about 15 of them per day. And in a week's time, the entire box of diapers is gone. And your husband looks at you angrily and says, stop feeding him so less diapers are used. And he said, are you kidding? It's my child. I want him to be well fed. And then you say, I think I need a pump. Why? Well, I'm really tired of waking up at 3 in the morning and nursing him. Once you pump, once you put this milk in this bottle, all you have to do is just take out the milk, put in the warmer, and give it to the kid. And physically I'm just tired. My boobs hurt. You say, well, how much is that going to cost? Well, Well, the cheapest I found on Amazon was $98.25. What? Can't you find one for 15 bucks? Yeah, but that works with charcoal. And then as your relationship with money changes, your relationship with your husband begins to change. And as your relationship with your husband begins to change, you force him to also evaluate his own relationship with money. Now he can drink 5 beers instead of 25. Now he can only spend 1 day with his friends as opposed to 3. So 18, it's only love. 19, it's a little bit of love, a lot of money issues now. As you get to be 25, you look at your husband and you say, we need a bigger place. It's not enough. This kid needs to walk around, move around. Okay. Well, you can't really go to Piedmont and rent a 1 or a 2 bedroom. It's about $3,000. So what do? Maybe you can find a relatively decent place, 1 bedroom, International and 48th. Remember, it's you just wanting to nurse your kid and make sure that he's in a safe environment within your home. As your child begins to walk and talk, he wants to go into the streets. As you walk into the streets and you go through the neighborhood, you realize people aren't looking that good. Some people are drunk. There are lots of people with lots of mental issues around. There's poverty around. And that begins to worry you. You say, I don't want the innocence of my child to be stolen by this community at this young of an age. All of a sudden you begin to think about innocence. The psychological and emotional well-being of your child. You didn't think about that when you were 18. What I'm trying to say to you, Paulo, is that this question that you're asking is because of your own emotional and intellectual growth, which has taken place in time. You didn't just one morning wake up and say, I want my husband to be a poet, to be an author, to be a religionist or a spiritualist, to also be an Elon Musk with lots of money and creativity. No. These are things that you're beginning to learn about yourself and what you want for yourself and your child in life. And these are devastating. Because with every new information, you realize how many awful decisions you've made that have resulted in awful consequences that now you have to go through and fix. And you need 20 lifetimes for that. Remember the story of the prodigal son. None of us are safe in life. Not a single one of us. Every time you learn something significant, important, relevant, you realize 1,000 mistakes you've committed. And the consequences are devastating. And with every new information about you, conflicts begin. Confusion begin. Anger begin. And you have to plow through them. And in some ways, maybe some of the thinkers are right. Human life, there's a guy whose name is Schopenhauer. He is considered to be a very cranky, dark philosopher. He's known to be a profound pessimist. And he says, human life is a mistake. I think the only life that is not a mistake, the only life that is not filled with regrets, the only life that is not filled with despair and depression, is the life lived by Benjamin Button. And let me tell you how that life is. See, all of us begin our life innocent, but adulthood really has no place for innocence. Adulthood, because of the complexity of society and because of the complexity of our own psychic life, adulthood has no room for mistakes. So as a child, you're born innocent, then you slowly move into stupidity and passion. You kind of just do things because they feel good. And because reflection is not part of our organism just yet. You're forced by life, you're forced by pain to think, to reflect, to examine, to be cautious. You have children. Do children think twice before running into the stove? Of course not. It's red, it looks beautiful, they touch. And then they scream, and then they cry, and then you have to hold them, give them the ice pack. It's only through pain that we learn. I mean, just think how awful that is. Only through pain that reflection comes about. Only through pain you realize what more things you actually need in life to be able to survive. You don't know any of this at the age of 18 when you enter a relationship. And this is such a great lesson you can impart to your children in hopes that they understand. That when you have a daughter, she's 15 and she comes to you and says, "Mom, I found this guy whose name is John, I want to be with him." You say, "Honey, let me understand, let me teach you the complexities of sex. Let me teach you the complexities of pleasure. There are pleasures to be had for sure, but there is also dangerousness that you need to be profoundly aware of." Do you really think that a 15-year-old has the power to overcome reflectively the traps of pleasure? I think not. So as a parent, what are you left with? The pain of frustration, the pain of not being heard, the pain of not being listened to, the pain of not being understood. You will never totally understand what your parents have gone through. The best you can do at this stage in your life, go to them. Bow to them. I know you can't cry, but hold 2 onions in front of your eyes. Cut them first. Cry. And say, "Mom, Dad, please forgive me. I haven't understood what you've said to me for the past 19 years. I will never understand. The only way I will understand is when I get to be parents, just like you. Until then, forgive all the errors." You know, it's like the saying of Jesus Christ on the cross in the Gospel of Luke. "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." And that's what you should do. That's what, in fact, all children should do. They should go to their parents and say, "Parents, forgive me, for I know not what I have done." Okay? So the life of Benjamin Button is this. You're not born as an infant who suffers from naivete or ignorance. You are born as a 90-year-old man who has completely lived life and remembers everything that he has done in life. Everything. And instead of you slowly moving towards death, You move towards infancy and then disappearance. It's beautiful. You enjoy every single moment of your life with no regret. You know, when people are about to die, they get to a place of complete acceptance. I mean, just fathom for a moment, imagine for a moment the horrifying place that human beings are positioned. You will struggle and struggle and struggle to bring about an ounce of perfection in your life, only to realize it's just not working out for you. Why? Pleasure sets you on a journey. That journey makes you a political animal. You will do whatever you can to bring that pleasure into real physical life. You will be nourished by it until you get to a place of saturation. What has nourished you now saturates you. In saturation, you will be satisfied. In satisfaction, you will find yourself bored. But before you become bored, you will be uninterested. And then you say, I feel so alone. This thing that used to speak to me, entertain me, distract me, fulfill me, complete me, is no longer doing those things for me. Now what? Now, if you happen to be a very fertile imagination, another desire will be blossoming inside you. For women, it's beautiful, because children create so many headaches in your life that you don't have a moment of rest. You know, you send your kids to school, you clean the house, then you make food. Your kids come home, you feed them, you clean them, you work on their school stuff with them, and then you cook supper because your husband is coming home. Then you put all of them to sleep. Then you clean the house. Then you wash dishes. Then you're exhausted. Then you pass out. And the Groundhog Day begins over and over and over. And then when you get sick, your husband is there. Your kids are there. And because society has already given you a narrative, as a woman you're just a mother, the fact that your kids are there taking care of you, that is most satisfying. You don't have this ridiculous man like Henry David Thoreau, you know, having the sign on the top of your door, suck the marrow out of life. First, most of these philosophies are created by these unhappy white men. That has now infected women as well. But I have digressed. The question was, let's do this. Let me make the question about me then. I walk into a class, I look at someone and I say, I am married. Do you think that for my marriage and for my relationship to work and work really, really well, should my companion be a Renaissance man or a Renaissance woman? That they have rebelled against the oppressive society, the oppressed philosophy of the masses, the oppression of the state, i.e. government, the oppression of the media. Does my husband or my wife need to be an artist? Do they need to go to church and cry their hearts out because they're so spiritual? They're trying to figure out the kingdom of God within. The reason why I ask that question is because I now live in a culture that has burdened me with all these desires. And if I was to be an honest human being, not so much a scholar, not so much an academic, but simply a regular common man, I would say, we have observed this disease. We know how this disease impacts the human being. It's like cancer. I don't have a remedy. The best thing I can say is the following. It's going to be an immensely bumpy road for all of us. We are not going to pave this path. You're not going to get rid of the obstacles. It's not going to happen. If anything, it's going to go worse. My only solution, my only recommendation would be this. Do not find the tools to remove the obstacles. Find tools to cope, to deal with the obstacles. That's the only way the obstacles will not impact you as much. You will not get rid of dissatisfaction. You will not get rid of suffering. You will not get rid of sickness or death. But you can find a philosophy of life that will help you deal with these things slightly better. Because if you don't find the proper perspective to deal with these life issues, you will get depressed and you will find yourself in paralysis. If on the other hand you find the proper perspectives, you will get depressed, but only for 5 hours, not your entire life. And if you do find the proper perspectives, those 5 hours that you are in fact depressed because you see too much and because you feel too intensely, you have also mastered how to live a political life. When your kids come home, despite being sad, sorrowfully depressed, you will put on a smiling face. You will have lunch and dinner ready. You will present them with a clean house. You will not scream. You will not shout, at least not as much. In a few years, when your kids graduate, and it's just you and your husband, you will say, do we have money to go on vacation without the kids? Now you say, wherever we go, we need to take the kids. Then you will find out that you need to somehow figure out what to do when it's just you and your husband on vacation. Time will pass, Paula, where hopefully not anytime soon. It's a fact of life though. Your husband will get sick. And your kids will have their own lives. And now you have to deal with this new aspect of yourself. How am I going to deal with a husband who can't move, who can't eat, who can't bathe himself, who can't clean himself? Or maybe it'll be reversed. Maybe you have to deal with a Paula who can't move, who can't eat. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is the following. Right now, your questions, your demands, your desires are very, very simple. They're complicated in their own, unique ways, but they're very, very simple. As you age, your life becomes more complicated. There is a movie called Yes, not the one where Jim Carrey played. The director is a woman, Sally Porter, I think. It's a really, really good movie. You should watch it. The entire movie is like they speak in poetry. Everything rhymes. It's beautiful. There's this. I'm sorry, it's not that movie. It's another movie with Ben Kingsley. Anyways, there's a woman, and they have this moment of honesty, where the lights are dimmed. She's ready to go to the airport to go back home, and she looks at him and she says, "You know, when I was young, I would fetch the attention of all these men, and they would make me feel so good. Now, as a woman in my late 50s or 40s, I have wrinkles. Men still look at me, but it's not because I'm attractive. In some ways, I feel as if they have pity on me. They know I am invisible. They know I am old. They know that my value in society has diminished. They look at me just to say that, we see you, you exist. You're not completely devalued." You know, my mom is almost 80. She had cancer. She survived it relatively well. But now her body is failing her slowly. But you need to see her. She's very much like your mom. She limps. But you have to pay attention to see that. And her body is a bit heavy now, so she has to carry all her weight. But man, you like your mom, Paula? She cooks and she cleans and she is agile. You know, she's a cougar. That's the only way she can continue to give her life and herself value. She fights against the realities of her life. I'm getting old, I'm getting sick, and yet I'm going to try. It's beautiful. You're not there yet. So your questions is, I want my man to look at me perhaps in a way that I can come to life. I want my relationship to be more of a romance now. I want that love that escaped our life to be brought back. In a few years, you won't even worry about those questions. I want my husband to be mature enough to stand by me when I'm old and sick.
That terminology I learned in my psychology class, so that's why it's, like the belief of intimacy and then isolation, and that's where I got that term from. That's it's like an old belief. I believe that people had to have these things in common. Now what they think people should have in common is called social homogeneity, which is just what two people have in common to do with leisure and what two people have in common for gender roles. So like if a woman's gonna accept being at home or being a mom, those are the two things that couples should have in common. Not just couples, I think, with friends and whoever you surround yourself with. Back then is when they believed that men had vocations and women's job was childbearing.
Yeah. I'm not really quite sure anymore if people can have things in common, and the reason is, and I'll say this very quickly and then we'll go. If, for example, you like to read books, and you want to find friends who like to read books, it has taken you a long, long time for you to find home, to find identity and relevance and value in you sitting at home by yourself and just reading for hours. That takes a lot of time. You have a relationship with books, and you can't have a relationship with anything unless you spend time with it. So today, I'm not really sure if human individuals have the capacity, the stamina, to spend a lot of time with one single thing to be able to cultivate a relationship. We are far too fragmented, we're far too distracted, and we don't really have the stamina. I mean, almost all of us in this class suffer from ADHD. You know, I sit in my office at 5 o'clock to write 2 paragraphs, reading the news here, watching YouTube here, reading the news again, watching YouTube, going back to writing, and you realize after 5 hours, you've written one single sentence. You say, really? Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care, you guys. Thank you. Thank you.